Dear YouTube, as you know, under copyright law, I am allowed to use portions of copyrighted material, in this case, copyrighted material belonging to the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society of Pennsylvania, so long as this is used for the purpose of criticism and parody. Please remember this when Watchtower comes complaining, because I've embarrassed them by using their propaganda in a way they disapprove of. Thank you. Hello there. In this video, I'll be taking a look at the July episode of JW Broadcasting featuring governing body member Samuel Hurd and governing body helper Alex Reinmueller. So without further ado, let's roll the first clip.
Christians are to be kind and considerate, mild-tempered and patient, and are to exercise self-control. They provide and care for their own and love their neighbor as themselves. That's a lot, isn't it? It's not a matter of just glibly saying, I am a Christian. But despite all of those impressive characteristics that we just enumerated, what did Jesus say the main identifying quality of a true Christian would be? Most of you know the answer to that. But let's read it again from John 13, 34 and 35. It says, I am giving you a new commandment, that you love one another, just as I have loved you. You also love one another. By this all will know that you are my disciples, if you have love among yourselves. Those are the theme verses for my discussion with you this month. The topic is love, the identifying mark of a disciple of Jesus.
This is a Bible verse repeatedly referred to by Jehovah's Witnesses as evidence that they are God's one true religion on earth. After all, if Jesus predicted that love would be an identifying mark of God's one true people, then, well, clearly Jehovah's Witnesses, if they're showing love to one another, are fulfilling that criteria. But it's quite clear that love is not an identifying mark of Jehovah's Witnesses when you consider their horrendous shunning practice. You cannot say of yourselves as a religion, we are identified by the love that we show, when you are showing love only to people in your religion who believe the same as you do, and showing the opposite of love to anyone who fails to meet the criteria of your religion, or to family members who stop believing as you do. And the interesting thing about Jesus was, I'm no longer a believer, but I think one of the best verses in the Bible, if I had to choose one, would be the parable of the Good Samaritan, because it describes a scenario where somebody is brutally attacked and the only person that helps is not someone of his religion, but someone who is actually polar opposite to him in terms of belief. That's the sort of love that is advocated for Christians by the character Jesus in the New Testament, and yet that's precisely not the kind of love that Jehovah's Witnesses show. They're only interested in supporting each other and showing love within the confines of their congregation. But the moment you go against them, the moment you do something they disagree with, the moment a family member finds himself on the wrong end of a judicial committee, well, then that love stops. So I would argue that if you're going to point to those verses as evidence that Jehovah's Witnesses are God's one true religion, then that's not a very good line of evidence to argue with.
We do not have to be an elder to provide a word of encouragement, do we? If we all keep focused on others in the congregation, not just ourselves, we will know who needs to be bolstered because of trials or circumstances that they face. Giving in this way is evidence of Christ-like love. You may be thinking, but I'm just a little old sister who finds it hard to squeeze out a word of encouragement to others. Perhaps you don't have to say anything. Just be there at the meetings or in the service. When others see your face, they're encouraged.
Well, now we all know what a little old lady sounds like according to Sam Hurd. It's interesting that he decided to do his impersonation of an old sister rather than an old brother. What's the difference? Surely the same advice would apply regardless of the gender.
Why not scroll down the list of those in your service group with the thought in mind of checking on those who have been missing from the meetings? Do they need a meal? Do they need some help? Perhaps around the house? Do they need transportation to the doctor? Can we allow our love to expand to fill their needs?
What Sam Hurd is recommending here is love bombing. If someone stops attending meetings or becomes infrequent in attending meetings, well, they should be checked on and they should be offered meals and help around the house and transportation to the doctors, etc. Why is this not applicable also to people who are attending meetings? Apparently only those who are showing evidence that they're weakening in their devotion to Watchtower get this kind of privileged treatment. But it's treatment that comes with strings attached, because in exchange for all this kindness, you will be expected to start attending meetings again regularly.
Contributing to the worldwide work which cares for the needs of our brothers around the world is another act of love. It demonstrates that we are a true disciple of Christ.
Well, there you go, folks. Contributing money to Watchtower is an act of love, and it's also evidence that you are a true disciple of Christ.
You know, about 1/3 of the world's population claims to be Christian. But how many of them show self-sacrificing love outside of their immediate family? Most are like a baseball team in a uniform. They think having the word Christian emblazoned across the front of their uniform is all that is required. However, most of them simply sit on the bench or on a pew in church. And many do not even attend the game. They do not live the life of a Christian. Jesus made clear that being a true disciple of His is not merely wearing a uniform, simply claiming to be His follower. No, it involves actively demonstrating works of love, swinging hard for the team, imitating the all-time greatest examples of love, Jehovah God and His Son, Jesus Christ.
Again, Sam Hurd is not ideally positioned to lecture us on what it means to show love as a Christian when he, along with 6 others, insist on punishing people with family estrangement, shunning, just for the crime of disagreeing with them. That kind of behaviour is the exact opposite of what most people would consider Christian. And that's before we even consider the fact that Sam and his pals are effectively killing Jehovah's Witnesses by banning them from having certain treatments involving blood, and they're failing to protect children through their mishandling of child abuse, the evidence for which is just overwhelming. None of these things point to a leadership that can be identified with Christ-like love.
I realized that the time had come to make a decision. The day I quit my job was one of the happiest days of my life. Since then, I've been able to dedicate every minute of my life to Jehovah with a clean conscience. In a few months, I got baptized. In the beginning, we were hardly making a living. However, this taught me to trust in Jehovah. I tried my best to keep service to Jehovah in first place. I deeply appreciate the support of my brothers and sisters and association with them. Before, I used to carry out the orders of men, some of which I carried out reluctantly. But now I am happy to carry out an assignment from Jehovah with the same spirit that the prophet Isaiah had, who said, "Here I am, send me."
This is the story of a former presidential bodyguard in Georgia who ends up becoming one of Jehovah's Witnesses. And I just found it extremely ironic that towards the end there, he said, well, previously I was carrying out the orders of men, and now I'm obeying and serving Jehovah. Well, I'm sorry to break the news, but you're still carrying out the orders of men. Just a group of men in another country who consider themselves God's sole channel of communication with mankind.
Prison is a very dangerous place, but I was surprised how they accepted the truth so easily. Really, I was amazed.
We needed to obtain permission to be able to continue to preach in the prison. We had so enjoyed the preaching work there. I went to see the authorities in the city to find out what was required so that we could have permission to preach in the prison. To my great amazement, they simply handed me a paper and told me to put my request in writing. They asked me to wait. Within minutes, I had the authorization in my hands without paying anything at all. Every time the situation seemed insurmountable to us, impossible to us, we saw the hand of Jehovah providing us with the suitable solution.
A group of Jehovah's Witnesses go to a prison, ask for permission to proselytize to the inmates, and their request is granted. Well, this must be Jehovah's hand.
Concerning Jehovah's Witnesses, personally, I'm very impressed. It's more than 3 years they've been more active in helping the detainees. The re-education of the prisoners is assured by Jehovah's Witnesses. This is a good collaboration on the part of Jehovah's Witnesses. With this, I'm very happy.
175 attended the Circuit Assembly in December 2014, which was held in the prison, and 7 were baptized.
This is the first time I've seen Jehovah's Witnesses baptized here in the Bouleau prison. This is a good thing. I encourage you to continue with this assistance.
Well, there you go. It must be God's one and only true organisation. Why? Well, because we have here a prison official who has nice things to say about Jehovah's Witnesses transforming his inmates into docile, unquestioning, unobtrusive cult followers.
It was a dark world growing up. I never knew what being a child was like. I was afraid of who I would grow up to be. I felt like I had no choice. That at a very young age, I as well started to partake of what I saw going on around me. I learned quickly that it helped numb the feelings that I had. Drugs were a way to escape that. I was in a lot of trouble with the law. I knew I needed change. So I joined the military at a young age.
So this is the story of a young married couple who actually meet before they become Jehovah's Witnesses when they're both doing military service. And right away you can see the propaganda element, because life outside Jehovah's Witnesses is portrayed as being dark, as being sinister. If you're a young child growing up outside Jehovah's Witnesses, well, probably your dad's going to be an alcoholic, and probably you'll be raised to be an alcoholic or a drug addict as well. That's the sort of impression Watchtower wants Jehovah's Witnesses to have of people in the world. But as I've argued in previous rebuttals, all you need to do to debunk that kind of reasoning is say to a Jehovah's Witness, do you honestly believe that all of the billions of people who aren't Jehovah's Witnesses live like that? Grow up with alcoholic parents, become drug addicts. If that were true, then every time you step out the house, you would be confronted with these kind of worldly zombies with a liquor bottle in one hand and a bag of cocaine in the other. That is not what we see. We see that the majority of non-Jehovah's Witnesses are fine, upstanding, morally oriented people, but that is not the impression Watchtower wants people to have in this video.
Around my teenage years, my life became difficult. I started to turn to drugs and alcohol in self-destructive ways, but none of these things were making me happy. I was very lonely. No one knew me. No one cared to know me. I felt so lost, and I was trying to fill this big hole in my heart with so many things, and none of it worked. One of my many car accidents due to drugs and alcohol ended me up in jail for 30 days straight. I felt like a hopeless mess. I just knew something's gotta change. So I joined the military thinking it was going to be the positive, great change that I needed, but it was not.
Well, there we have more of the same. If you're not raised as a Jehovah's Witness, probably you'll end up doing drugs, probably you'll end up getting thrown in jail, probably you'll end up having car accidents, because people who aren't Jehovah's Witnesses are a hopeless mess. Only by becoming one of Jehovah's Witnesses can you live a good life, can you be morally oriented, can you be a balanced individual. Thankfully for this particular hopeless mess, she ends up getting a job in a factory where it appears that most of the workers are Jehovah's Witnesses.
Jeremiah and I were both working in a steel factory in Montana. During this time, I was being trained on a drill by one of Jehovah's Witnesses, a sister named Molly. Molly said, "You're gonna have downtime on this machine, maybe a couple hours, so feel free to read whatever I have in my toolbox." I opened it and immediately, little yellow book, "What does the Bible really teach?" caught my eye.
Subtle.
I love the pictures, the scriptures in the beginning of the book. They touched my heart immediately, and I felt like these answer all the questions I've been searching for my entire life. Another sister came over, her name was Corey, and she said, "Molly and I can come over and we can talk to you about the Bible tomorrow. If you have any questions, we'd love to answer them using the Bible." I said, "Yes, come over."
Of course, anyone can have answers to questions, but that doesn't make them the right answers. In this case, we have a girl who went through military service and, for all we know, saw some truly horrendous things while she was on duty, and before that she had a really bad upbringing and background. So she was ripe pickings, she was emotionally vulnerable, she was a perfect candidate for Jehovah's Witnesses to exploit and ride to the rescue with promises of a paradise earth without pain or suffering.
I was a little bit more apprehensive. I stayed just to make sure nothing got weird. But this was finally something very different. And I realized what they were saying came from the Bible. Never seen that before.
What, he'd never seen a group try to claim that all of its beliefs are based on the Bible?
They invited us to the Kingdom Hall. We went in, everybody had their Bible, had time to look the scriptures up together, and everybody was so warm and inviting.
These were the people I've been searching for my entire life.
More love bombing. Well, there's a surprise.
All of a sudden, change was possible. We knew what changes we needed to make in our life.
What we were doing, our actions, we had to clear out things that Jehovah hates.
Like just going through our house and deciding what it is do we need to get rid of.
Note to anyone who's considering becoming one of Jehovah's Witnesses, you will at some point have to go through your house and search for things that your new religion prohibits. But don't worry, this isn't a cult.
By allowing the truth to transform our lives, Holly and I have received many blessings, and eventually we were able to come here together and serve at Bethel. We got the truth in a weld shop, and now I get to weld here in Jehovah's house for him.
Because if there's one thing the supreme creator of the universe needs, it's a weld shop.
It's so nice to know that Jehovah is looking down on us.
Like some kind of nosy neighbour.
that he was able to see through all of the trash that was there in our life. He was able to find something and decided to work with it.
A person's life before becoming one of Jehovah's Witnesses is full of trash.
And I really think of a scripture, Psalm 145, verse 19. He satisfies the desire of those who fear him. He hears their cries for help and rescues them. Jehovah did that for us. If you ask Jehovah to display his hand in your life, no doubt at all in my mind that will happen.
Or to put it another way, if you're not that fussed about evidence and you're keen to orient your life around something just because it makes you feel good and gives you something to hope for, then probably Jehovah's Witnesses is the religion for you.
In the following dramatization, a young brother is reminded of the value of carefully examining his heart.
My name is Sean. I was raised in the truth. I was doing everything right. But I was doing everything wrong.
Sean, take it from me as someone else who was raised in the truth, it really isn't difficult to do things that the governing body considers wrong. Just having a perfectly normal relationship with someone else your age is enough to get you in serious trouble. Oh, that's where this is going.
I was in my senior year of high school. Everything was going great. Until this new girl joined our school. I really don't know how it even started. We just sort of hit it off and became good friends. I mean, she was so easy to talk to.
Of course, most people would consider a young person falling in love with someone he meets at school as perfectly normal and healthy, but for Jehovah's Witness parents, that's their worst nightmare.
Before I knew it, we were texting all the time. Then, one thing led to another. Honestly, when things started to get physical, I thought I could control it, but it was only getting worse. I didn't want to let my parents down, so I started lying to them. And then I started lying to myself.
And now we have the guilt tripping. Sean feels terrible because he's in a physical relationship with someone he's met at school, and because this is absolutely out of the question for young witness youths, he feels he needs to lie about it to his parents. He needs to conceal it. He needs to live a double life. This is the essence of sexual repression, which is a daily reality for young people who are raised as witnesses. There is nothing wrong or abnormal about situations like this. But Watchtower takes something that is normal, that is healthy, that is even beautiful, and twists it and contorts it into something that is evil, that someone should be ashamed of. And this creates enormous psychological pressures on young people.
The next night, we had family worship. We were reading about the account of Ananias and his wife Sapphira. When a special fund was set up for needy Christians, Ananias sold a field. But then he boldly claimed he was contributing the entire proceeds of its sale. In reality, though, Ananias had secretly held back some of the price for his personal gain. Peter boldly said to him, "You have lied, not to men, but to God." Jehovah wasn't fooled by their pretense.
First of all, there should be no shame in someone in Sean's situation keeping their private life private, especially when they have the threat of shunning and disfellowshipping hanging over them simply for having a perfectly normal relationship with someone they love. Secondly, if you read on in the account in Acts about Ananias and Sapphira, I'm reading from Acts 5, if you read on to verses 5 and 6, it says, "On hearing these words, Ananias collapsed and died, and great fear came over all those who heard about it. Then the younger men rose, wrapped him in cloths, carried him out, and buried him." So apparently this is a verse that Watchtower is proud of. A man is executed on the spot without trial by the Almighty simply for holding back some of the proceeds from selling his property. Apparently murdering someone in cold blood isn't as bad as withholding money that's rightfully yours. Well, this really shows a loving God who's willing to extend mercy and help people towards repentance.
Then we read Psalm 44:21. God is aware of the secrets of the heart.
And he will slaughter you at Armageddon unless you do exactly what the governing body tells you to do.
Reading this account of Ananias and Sapphira made me realize I wasn't just lying to my parents or my friends. I was lying to Jehovah. As much as I didn't want to let my parents down, even more so, I didn't want to let Jehovah down.
The guilt-tripping and fear-mongering here is just off the charts. Can you imagine what it must be like for a young Jehovah's Witness watching this video, especially if they are in a similar situation where they're in a relationship with someone at school, or they're doing something else that Watchtower frowns on? Imagine how much guilt you'll be feeling right now. And you can bet that as a direct result of this particular video, there will be young people who are coerced into giving confessions to their parents, confessions to the elders, and of that number there's bound to be a percentage who will be disfellowshipped and shunned and have their lives ruined at such a crucial stage purely because of this exact film. And all because Watchtower feels it has the authority to regulate the sex lives of 8 million Jehovah's Witnesses around the world.
I prayed long that night. I didn't hold anything back. By the next morning, I knew what I wanted to do. It wasn't easy, but my parents were very supportive, and I also got the help I needed from the elders.
Fortunately for Sean, instead of being disfellowshipped by the elders and shunned by everyone he knows and loves simply for being in a perfectly normal, loving relationship, he manages to only get reproved, and having, we assume, broken up with his high school girlfriend, he at least gets the wonderful privilege of being able to go to the school for kingdom evangelizers.
It's been a few years, but as I look back now, I was one of those kids living a double life.
Of course, it would have to be a few years because on the application form for the School for Kingdom Evangelizers, you are specifically asked whether you have been reproved or disfellowshipped for something in recent years. So if this were an accurate depiction, it's unlikely that Sean would be allowed to go to the School for Kingdom Evangelizers while he still looks just as young as he was when he committed the offence.
But now, with Jehovah's help, I'm living the best life.
What a clear warning this is, not only for young ones, but also for those of us who've served Jehovah for many, many years. As we well know, serving Jehovah faithfully for many decades is only valuable if we endure to the end.
Which is another way of saying, be on your best behaviour, because if Armageddon comes and Jehovah catches you doing something naughty, you're going to get turned into bird food.
You know, there's an old saying that says, time flies when you're having fun.
That would explain why JW Broadcasting episodes seem to go on forever.
Well, you know, even scientists acknowledge that there's truth in that. A study that was published in the year 2012 in the journal Psychological Science said this: although we tend to believe that time flies when we're having a good time, these studies indicate that what it is about the enjoyable time that causes it to go by more quickly, it seems to be the goal pursuit or achievement-directed action we're engaged in that matters. Just being content or satisfied may not make time fly, but being excited or actively pursuing a desired object can. Isn't that interesting? Well, now, if we're the sort of persons that are busy with holy acts of conduct and deeds of godly devotion, reaching out for that most important goal of everlasting life, we will speed up the coming of the day of Jehovah in our hearts and our minds.
Isn't it interesting how governing body members are ready to quote from scientists when it comes to things that don't contradict their beliefs and teachings, but when it comes to evolution, well, they're right and scientists are wrong.
The roof above our heads is from our Heavenly Father, but if we need to share, would it be a bother?
Well, that's good to know. If the roof above our heads is from our Heavenly Father, that would mean we don't need to worry about paying any rent or mortgage payments.
Follow the course of hospitality, imitate God, help us. Do it with true impartiality, that's what it means to love.
Well, I've just learned something about Jehovah's Witnesses that I didn't previously know. Apparently they show love and hospitality with impartiality, which would mean that they show love and hospitality to apostates, gay people, people from other religions, atheists, people who believe in evolution. Apparently I've got it all wrong, and if you are one of those people, you can call at the home of a Jehovah's Witness and be greeted with open arms. I can't wait. Well, that's all I've got time for with this particular rebuttal video. Look out for the rebuttals to the August and September broadcasts next month in September. Meantime, I'm going to get back to work on my book. As always, I hope you found this video interesting. Please don't forget to subscribe for more videos, and thank you for watching.